and my work is also on motion planning for robots. But the specific field is that I'm working towards motion planning in such a manner that large teams of robots can coordinate their tasks accordingly with respect to each other. So there's an aspect of communication involved and uh, coordination between multiple agents, and that is my current field of research. So these robots, the plan framework is pretty generic, so we're not restricted to any uh, kind of a robot. For example, we could use it for a flying robot or a ground robot just as well. So that's what my current research is about. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi everyone. So I hope I'm audible. And my both of the recent research internships have been in the field of at the intersection of neuroscience and reinforcement learning. More of how we can use reinforcement learning to create models which explain the decision making in humans or any animal for that matter. And what I'll be working towards is the same field. I'll work on safe reinforcement learning in humans and in machines. So the core idea is how do humans keep themselves safe by using pain as a precise learning signal. So the lab I work with and did my thesis at is the same one, the pain and aversive learning lab. And we are also thinking about ways to, again, once we know that this is how, once we can argue that this is how it works in humans, then maybe taking inspiration from neuroscience to build any algorithms for safe robotics as well in the near or distant future.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I hope I'm audible. So yeah, I've been interning at Myra's Labs as a research intern before. So my in general field was natural language processing, but like a lot of work involved cognitive neuroscience, and recently I've like majorly working upon adversarial machine learning, uh, robust AI, and like these are the general jargons that you will relate it with. Yeah, I've been still interning over there, so like it's been around a year over that. Yeah, it's been more than a year, and yeah, that's mostly it. And right now in Commerce IQ also, it's a bit of research work, and it's generally about e-commerce and natural language processing over there. So quite a mix of a lot of fields. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would also like to thank all of you to making it to the discussion today. I know both the Mihis are joining us from the US, and it's like 9 hours difference there, and it's a Saturday morning. And for most of us, it's like Saturday evening. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Okay, yeah, let's begin. So first of all, it's a question from a general point of view. How do you start, getting into core research? I mean, research that might have an end goal, might not have an end goal, or how did you personally start getting into research, and how did you convert that into formal research from whatever your club courses, etc., to a formal research that you guys are currently doing? Yeah, anybody could start.
I will start with this one. So, the way I entered the field of robotics is through ERC. I was very much interested in robotics when I joined BITS, and that's why I joined ERC. And I started with some small projects. Like in my first year, I participated in a competition called Robocon, which was not really research oriented, but mainly gave quite a bit of experience with hardware and software development for robots. Very basic one. Uh, to a lot of my seniors, I got exposure to many other projects happening in different labs. I started reading about their work, and in through the club, I got to do a few projects related to this. My formal research experience started when I joined the autonomous robots lab for my thesis, and that's when it I really got to know how the research happens in this field. And then from then onwards, I have been working with the same lab since till today, and even later I will. So that's how I got into research, starting with smaller, interesting projects in my undergraduate, and then formally joining a research lab.
I can continue. So my personal journey has been very identical to what Mihiri has just described, because both of us are from the same batch and we joined the club at around the same time, and were also most of the time a part of the same team in all the competition that we participated in. But adding to that, a lot of a research journey also started. The research journey also starts when you begin realizing that what you already know is not enough to be able to accomplish what you want to do with a certain project. And uh, 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 most of the times when you just Google about how to go about things or how to do something, or see if someone has done something like that, you would come across very complicated terms that you probably may not have seen before or may not have heard about before. And that looking deeper into those concepts, or trying to get more information about what you need to know in order to be able to do what you want to, that is actually where this begins. And just setting up goals just a bit above beyond what you can currently do always helps you learn more. And this is how I found the motivation to get to learn newer things uh, throughout most of my undergrad.
Adding to it, so basically, like for me, it was I like at least the topic I chose to work in and have been working for the past few years. It has been mostly uh, from my perspective, a lucky thing in the sense that when I started out, I wanted to explore computer systems and computers in general, but I wanted to look into things which were less explored, especially in the days, in the sense that you see a lot of people getting into development, a lot of people getting into programming, also a couple of them getting into machine learning, deep learning, and I also wanted to see what else is out there. And I started out with security, cyber security in general. Uh, I don't think like this is something which usually comes up, but I think all of these started with a Quark summer technical program back in my first year, and the PhD on cybersecurity, and I got interested into cryptography because I was there are certain aspects of math which I really like, and that just fit upon cryptography very well. The way you use those things, so sort of coursework too. But yeah, like I think it's just matter of luck for me at that point that I chose something and I just liked it, so I continued with it. But I think first year and second year are more of those exploratory phases where you sort of look into everything, what is out there, and probably like choose what you like, and try to like learn more about that. Obviously, coursework is not going to teach you anything in depth. It's only going to introduce you. Even clubs, like until you take up projects, uh, whatever you learn from clubs is also at a very uh, superficial level as far as I see, and you will have to take up projects either in a club like ERC, which has a lot of projects, or SOPs, which you should kind of take a bit seriously or look at props. If there are fields where, like, there are certainly fields where our college doesn't necessarily have professors working in it, then probably like have the courage to like email a prof outside the institute, be it in India or abroad, asking for help. I think a lot of them are really helpful and they'll reach out back if you need some help.
Yeah, I completely agree with Rahul and Mihir. So, with respect to my work, it's somewhere at the intersection of an engineering field and neuroscience, which is more of a pure science field. So again, like most of the problems where I was thinking about where it's an engineering problem, I've felt exactly how maybe Veer has felt, as in maybe something I could not solve is an active research problem, and we need to get things working in that way, and that's why you need to research and explore more and read more about it and see how you can think about it. But why I moved towards neuroscience at times was the kind of things, like maybe the problems that were being discussed at that point in some narrow aspects of AI which I knew about were not challenging enough or were not something that interested me that deeply. So what I felt was I went on to search things which sort of interested me more. So in the first year, I the CT course on reinforcement learning, which was a great opportunity to have one-on-one interaction with third yearites and fourth yearites who are sort of doing really well in the field, and actually had that interaction for 6 months period in person in the room was quite good. And since then, I realized that okay, if I want to do something in AI, maybe it makes more sense to also look at how how it's done in natural intelligence. And then from the third year onwards, I picked up more projects. So again, it depends on how you want to utilize the resources you have. As you are in BITS, which is sort of a premier institute, there's bound to be some profs who are doing well in some fields and some which is yet developing. So at that point, care as you know it, but I think there were a few profs who are doing really well in neuroscience. And then that's why I did a few SOPs in neuroscience, sort of deviating from AI, but then eventually it all came back by the time of a fourth year. And both me and Sumesh were also part of SEDAL. I think Sumesh can talk about that more. But yeah, that was again, some clubs are more research focused as well, and hands-on projects focused such as BRC, Aero, SEDAL. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So my personal journey was a bit more bumpy and like haywire unlike the others. So like when I joined college, I didn't know much about computer science or engineering. Obviously, I just got marks for PCM and I joined with that and all of that. So like my motive in my first year was just to like so like most of my peers were doing something or the other, so I was just getting a bit FOMOed out. So I joined these CT courses. I joined a lot of them: Python, machine learning, competitive programming, and all. And at some point of time, like this was the general concept, like concept that if you have to get a job, you have to do DSA and all of that. So I thought like my passion is just to get a job. So I was like putting a lot of efforts in that over there. But over the time, so I mean, I'm not saying anything. This is just a personal opinion, but I was into more like I felt I needed something to build, and I mean, so then I shifted to web development and all, but I still couldn't find the exact mojo. But at the end of like my first year, I realized that okay, this is a field that is interesting. So unlike like these all are senior to me, and so in my time, I think machine learning and all of these got a bit more popular and all. So yeah, I took machine learning at that point of time. Then after CT, like I was even a member of CT, just like Pranav. Then I joined Stadil, then I joined Midas, and this is how it went. So I mean, my journey was a lot community focused. Like if I would have done it like personally, then I wouldn't have like switched my tracks ever, because there was some increment that I was always seeing regarding what I was doing, whether it was competitive coding, whether it was web development and all. But joining the communities, and I saw that no, like some people are also doing this, and yeah, I mean, it might be that you need to follow something that you like more than what is looking objectively better to you. So that was kind of how I got into it. And like Cradle, by joining Cradle, I went to the research side. Then I joined, like took some SOPs, I took some courses and all, and that is how like this profile gradually developed.
Yeah, that's been pretty interesting to listen. But Rohan, let's on continuing with this. How did you like guys like apply on a practical view? How did you, because we all know that we apply for, even if we apply for X number of theses or X number of internships, we will mostly not get all of them. So how was your experience of applying to internships or theses work out, and what are those small tips that you would like to tell students like us who are in completing their second year or completing their third year, and who would try start applying for theses, start applying for internships be?
So maybe I can start with this. Uh, so basically, while applying for thesis, for me it was cold mails but personalized to an extent. Personalized as in I just went up, searched the professors. At that point, I was not sure what I wanted to do, like the exact field I wanted to do research in. So it was quite interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So I just searched the Google Scholar profiles and tried to see the recent papers what they have been publishing, the lab has been publishing. Try to summarize their let's try to summarize the paper in 15 minutes of reading and try to come up or build with some future work possible which could act as a hook in your personalized email. And that sort of is one way. But so that's a useful skill to have, but it has its pros and cons. It's not very efficient, cold mailing. So the other ways which from personal experience, I can say that the other research internship with ENS Paris is with Boris Gutkin, Wiki BITS in BITS Go itself. So in that way, you can utilize the network you already have, be it network with professors in BITS Goa. So if you already do your long SOP or informal work with the professor, he can basically vouch for you with his colleague and say that, okay, here's a promising candidate. Why not take him up for any upcoming project idea that you have? And I think most of this is sort of leveraging this network and having the profile, like making a profile good enough so that you can fill up that position. These two things are quite necessary, and most of the research internships at this level sort of because you don't have much on your profile, so it builds on trust of the professor or someone who can recommend you at sometimes. So or else cold emails is the hard way. Maybe so if not the professor network, you can also leverage the senior networks. Like maybe both the Mihirs can talk more about it because I think yeah.
So for both of us, we have had students from BITS who are working in our lab since uh, the batch with the ID number starting from 2014. So 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017 have done their theses in our lab, and this happened because a lot of the work that our seniors did or juniors did and was pretty good, and our advisor liked it. So having a senior who has done very good in their thesis and uh, has the advisor's trust as to their opinion would be, or their choice of recommendations would be good for the lab, is you can also leverage that, and you can request your seniors or anyone from the alumni network uh, for opportunities or any for any openings or vacancies that they're aware of. So yes, this is actually a good way, because this all of these discussions, parallel to what you would do with the professors, are these are also informal. You could just call up your senior anytime and talk to them on the phone or ask for advice or anything. So these are actually very good ways to just look for opportunities. And people who are especially in that field now after graduating, they're usually aware of more opportunities that may be available, and they're not afraid of the process that goes in when you have to apply for a thesis, because they've gone through that and it's now behind them. So they can actually advise you from a better point of better experience. So, for example, I was extremely worried about sending an email to my advisor from my personal email address as opposed to the BITS email, which looked very robotic. And now I just realized it doesn't matter. Uh, and things like what an advisor values, or what would be considered important text in an email, could be actually better be judged by someone who's already gone through the process and completed it actually. So definitely you should talk to your seniors and keep stay in touch with them even after they graduate, uh, just so that you're aware of what opportunities are available.
Yes, that is very important. And one more point to add to that is, as my advisor has also told this to me, that the professors get like 50 emails from students every day, and they don't have time to talk to each and every one of them. And one email is not really going to tell them everything about yourself. So having someone who can recommend you can at least get you a chance to talk to the professor, as opposed to the professor just skipping your email. So that's why having contacts with someone who has worked with them is very important or very helpful.
Adding to it, uh, so basically, like, I'll just try to like compartmentalize a few things here in the sense. If you look into, again, getting back to it, like the amount of competition you have getting into a few fields, especially with AI and ML, and the amount of competition you might face getting into fields which are less explored. That's also something to consider here. In the sense, definitely, like networking is the biggest game to get an opportunity to work with someone. In the sense, you sort of try to form a network to that person, however possible, through alumni network, through your through the professors you worked with, or such ways. But one thing is one important thing is about like where to start, in the sense that a lot of such fields, they do not really like, as I told you, like my field can have a professor actively working on the things I like in bits, actively working on things I like to work on. So like back in my second year, I had sort of like known what the advantages of like doing a PS would be and what would be the disadvantages, in the sense that I know where PS1 and PS2 will take me, and just a question of if I really want, at least if I'm sure if I really want to go there or not, if I want to leave it to chance, if I still want to explore it. And at least personally for me, back in my second year, I knew that any of the opportunities PS would give me, be it PS1 or PS2, was not something I really liked. So I decided to drop PS. Again, you should like take this with a pinch of salt, in the sense that like it definitely gives you a lot of prospective options later to do PS, but then you also have to like just like it's just a question back then if you really want to drop it or not, and I think you will know the answer best. Uh, if there is no risk, then I dropped, and I cold emailed professors. I cold emailed a lot of them, almost everyone in India back in my second year. Uh, the cold emailing works at that point of time, according to me, basically because they know that you are a second year, right? They know how much you know, and they know that you really cannot think a lot in terms of research. What I think they will do is definitely gauge you by your interest and sort of by talking to you. You don't really have to like mail professors who are doing a lot of work, who are doing great in the field. I chose an institute as simple as IIIT Bangalore, which is not really known that much, but does really have some people who who have good contacts. So if you just start off with some cold emailing back in your second year if you're really sure you get into that field. That also works. But again, like I think all of us come with our own experiences and like you should really take everything with a pinch of salt and at that point of time you need to think what to do.
I mean, I'm still applying to my thesis, so but I mean, I have my thesis in the next semester. But yeah, I agree with the point that I mean, not necessarily should your thesis like be in a very big short name or something like that. And more specifically, like as long as you are concerned about research, it's more about what work you are going to do and like who are the people who are going to be like, immediately in contact with you or like professors and all because many a times you'll see that like big labs and all like they don't have a lot of work and even if they have like very big names and all they won't be directly in contact with you so that won't really matter that much.
So now, in most of our panelists are not directly working in the fields that they majored or minored in, except for probably Rahul, who's doing cryptography, which is mostly linked to, somewhat linked to mathematics. How much does your major or your CG in major impact your internship versus getting a good LOR or a good internship? That's the question most of us have because, yeah, for obvious reasons. It would be great if you could, like, talk a little on that.
Uh, Let me start. Also, because you gave an example. So the problem is like my core field of research being theoretical cryptography, though it seems like it's a lot related to math. It's more of theoretical computer science, and I faced a lot of problems with getting a chance, getting a PhD offer from US admits this year because of that, in the sense that when it comes to concepts like when it comes to subjects like CS theory or systems, these are things people really want you to have formal coursework in, and they really are skeptical, irrespective of the work you've done. Sometimes it definitely helps, like publications sort of give them more confidence in you, but then what I've seen in my field is they either expect publications in top-notch conferences which have really less acceptance rate, or they at least expect you to have formal coursework. Again, coming into CG, I think CG is definitely an important thing to manage. I'm not telling to give it a lot of importance, but try to manage the best you can. Uh, I I have like my GPA was below 7 during all my applications, and it does affect, but it's not the ultimate thing because like my LORs did get me a lot of PhD admits, so that's definitely something. It's good to have, it doesn't really matter if you don't have it as long as you have good LORs, but it's definitely something you need to try to manage, and that's something I think is important.
Yeah, covering the CG parts, I mean, if CGPA is most important coming into play when you're applying for masters, but like when it's when it's like about core research like PhD and all, it will start downplaying and LORs help you in both cases. But yeah, as Rahul mentioned, like mostly places they'll expect you to have some sort of publication or at least a research record. But you will always see cases where like people will say that this is just a myth and all. One thing that you need to make sure over there, so like you also have to look at statistically, like how many people did get that. So when it's a rare case, it's usually something different about them. But so I would say maintain a decent CG. I mean, even I'm in the 7 pointer range, so Usually you will get to see that try to maintain it above 8 or all, but it's also about the competitiveness of the field. Like mostly a CS masters will require you, perhaps like it's a safe thing to say that 8 plus, but like it depends on your field to field and all of that as well. So try to have a good CG, and it will definitely help you with masters. But like LORs, your research record, and all of these are pretty important as well.
Uh, Adding to that, parallelly, adding to the discussion on CG, I think the question was also about branch changes. So my branch change was pretty drastic from bachelor's to PhD, which was mechanical engineering to computer science engineering, and it is difficult to do such large jumps in branch. Usually, because when you go for a graduate program, they somewhat expect you to have a basic background, the most basic courses, which unfortunately BITS doesn't let you choose with the current structure, uh, especially for mechanical students. However, I got an admit here because I did my thesis in the same lab, and my advisor knew how much I had worked with him, and based on that, I was able to get an admission in my current university. And this actually happens. It becomes easier to jump branches when you apply to work under someone you've already worked with. So it doesn't. It hasn't just happened to me. It also has happened to some of my seniors or some of the people I know who are also working in different labs in different universities. But drastic changes in your branch are a little difficult to do directly. However, something that you can do is look for similar opportunities of your interest in a department that is of the same department as your undergrad. So, for example, if you want to do, in my case, if you want to do robotics, I usually apply to all the PhD programs in robotics that were taking place under mechanical engineering departments in various universities. There is also machine learning happening in for the mechanical field in mechanical engineering departments, and I would assume that's the same case for other fields. So there is a lot of computer science and electrical are kind of homogenized a little bit, so it becomes easier. I would think it becomes a little easier to switch between the two. Electrical to computer science being, of course, very common. But there are also opportunities in fields of your interest even inside your department. So changing the department shouldn't be a priority. You should just be able to find the right kind of work within your department and make it the easiest for you, or maximize your chances of getting accepted in that uh, department so that you can work on your field of interest.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think my change of field is also quite drastic from electronics engineering to straight up clinical neurosciences department in medical sciences division. So, but then according to me, and I've seen it happen through the application process, is that even in the interview which I had, they sort of looked at it as a pro. Because let's say in neuroscience, there'll be people from all sorts of backgrounds, from psychology majors to experimental psychology and neuro and even other fields. So some of whom do not have strong quantitative backgrounds as well. So having someone from a strong quantitative or engineering background is something they would want to have to maintain the diversity in their department as well, and it sort of helps the whole department in that sense. So it's maybe sometimes it's a matter of convincing, and it's easier if again your professor can vouch for you. And I think it was same as in the where I did my PhD thesis. The same professor recommended me, and he sort of also wrote as in during my PhD thesis I've done enough work which could sort of form, let's say, the first chapter of the PhD thesis itself. I think that's sort of equivalent for most of the students who do it this way. And regarding let's say LORs and CG, I'd just like to categorize into three, four options which you have. Like maybe if you're applying to research internships through something like a common portal, which could be MyTex, or many such programs out there. So usually there's going to be much more cutthroat competition, and their CG is given priority in order to rank participants. It's not that easy to do it without that. Even LORs will play a role. But then if you're applying individually for through code meaning, then most probably they won't require an LOR, or they, again in CG, like let's say 3 out of 4 CG in US is not the same as 7.5 CG in let's say India. Again, there are different tiers, as you know, like maybe some universities it's easier to get a good CG than others. And the professor out there is not going to know that at all. So I think he'll just judge it on face value if he values it. That's one option. Or the second thing he'll do, let's say if the professor's lab has Indian and Chinese students, let's say, and then let's say Indian or a Chinese student applies. I'm just giving an example to the lab, then he'll just pass his profile to existing PhD student over there and ask him, okay, how do you think this student is like based on his credentials and based on his university? Can you create some sort of a judgment and let me know? So, and then that's how usually they do it informally in a way. That's what I've seen until now. So, yeah, this is how it works.
So as Pranav correctly mentioned, for internships, those which are kind of competitive, where you have to submit an application to a formal place, their CGPA matters quite a bit. And some of the programs also mention certain required CGPA and along with LORs. However, if you are just applying or just contacting directly to professors outside any programs, like if you're not asking for a PhD or a master's or some research assistantship, they won't necessarily look at your CGPA that much, because that does not exactly tell them what your research potential is. In that case, references do matter a lot. They won't ask you for an LOR, but having someone who can tell them that yes, at least giving this person an opportunity to talk will definitely be helpful. But in that case, CGPA is not something that they will actively look upon.
Thank you for that view. So there's one more question from the audience, which is like quite apt for us right now. So most professors might require a certain starting position of in terms of knowledge, where when they can allot a project or they can accept you as a student for any research internship or a thesis, etc. So how would you advise someone who's just starting out, someone who's in their third year, or someone who's just starting out in their third year, to plan their year so that they gain the necessary skills and mindset for doing research? And adding to that, could you also talk about how to apply for a research project, or how did you apply in your case for a research project under a professor that's out of BITS?
Firstly, something that's very important is that the professors know what you could be capable of. So they have worked with students for a very long time, and I think Rahul said this earlier that I don't remember Rahul or Pranav, but they know what a second year student can do, and they know what a third year student can do, and they don't expect groundbreaking research from undergrad students. They don't expect you that your research will change the whole field in one paper or two papers. So the most important thing you should just keep in mind is that you are you have very strong basics of that field. and you can build from that. And in the lab, when you start working, you will get the necessary exposure to build on that. But your first priority should be having extremely strong basics. For someone whose research would be predominantly coding, I would suggest knowing how different code bases function, how codes are working with large repositories, or working with different languages adhering to the style guide, and so on and so forth, and being up to date with all the good practices of that particular language are important. For someone who has thesis in mechanical engineering, something like solid designing or practical experience in 3D modeling softwares is extremely important. But it's not necessary that you have already designed something that has changed everything around you and it's a great thing. You just need to be capable of doing it, and you can be guided in the right direction during your thesis. So just to make sure that you don't spend your time doing the most basic things when you could be using those to build something during your period period of the lab.
Also, yeah, Pranav, you can go ahead, continue to talk.
Oh, okay. Thanks. So yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Yeah. So along with building basics, I think second and third year is a good time to just explore what are the open research problems out there. So I don't think I read any research papers at all in first year or much, but then halfway through second year, sort of I started just like just screening these papers or just having a glimpse at them, seeing okay, what is it that they are trying to show, like what have they done, and what are the future options, the future work options, and just trying to build views. Anything with research requires you to come up with new ideas and think independently. So if you are already if you condition yourself to think independently and at least create an opinion or about what could be a future work option, and maybe, and then once you get into that, then you can engage with other people in the lab in a discussion, and then that could lead to even further possibilities. But to start with, if you this is a good way to prepare in second or third year. Just read through papers in different fields, even if you don't understand, just skip the equations, let's say, and just try to understand the abstract and the what are the discussions and the confusion section at the very least, and just try to get a grasp of the field. And you don't need to set out time for this at all. Like I remember, so up until like, let's say the second semester of second year, I stopped. I reduced paying attention in the lectures at BITS. So usually, simultaneously, I would, let's say, read up a paper on archive while professors is teaching something else. I do not advocate this by any means, but I mean there are ways to do multitasking if you like if you really wish to. Yeah.
Right. So again, like there are like like the question you posed, like approaching professors on fields you're already working in is one aspect, and then starting to work in a field which you with a professor you've already approached. Like there are two, these are like potentially probably like two ways to get into that field, right? Probably you already are in the field, and then you will already know certain things you can always tell. But like coming back, it's, I think it's more about how you have shown progress in your previous projects that people usually care about more than the topic itself. In the sense, say you started from zero and did something worth 3 months of time by taking that summer and like building something, or say producing a paper, or just even development. Like if you started from zero and did that, it shows potential. Like I think when you write your emails, when you like uh, also like when you make your CV, these are things which you should also point out to, because like that sort of brings attention to your profile. Like if you're capable of learning something in 2 or 3 months, or say any amount of time, it shows some potential which the professor will tend to believe with some sort of credibility already added by references or say your projects which are out there. So that's definitely something which will help. Uh, Catering to the last question, because Mihir told about references, I think it's very important for you to have a list of references on your CV always, irrespective of you sending LORs or not. They might not ask, but knowing that you've already worked with someone or you know someone whom they know and they can vouch for you is something which will always get you at least an interview or a chat with the professor, irrespective of what you've been doing till now.
Another important thing that as in a third year student you should start doing, or even at the end of your second year, is start documenting what all things you have done. This could include, if you're working on software side, update your GitHub account, have the repositories that you can make them public, have proper readmes, documentations, instructions. Then I did not do this, but it's a good idea if you can have a web page of yourself which details your projects, videos, and these things will help uh, the people you are applying to understand in more detail. For example, my advisor will specifically look for GitHub links. If you have added, it's a plus point. So it's not just important that you know things and you have done things, but others should also know that you have done things and you know stuff. So that's why documentation of your projects and uh, build display of your profile is also something you should start building in your third year.
Yeah, so talking about SOPs and all of those projects that you can do on campus, I started them a bit earlier than most people would do. So the first thing is as already mentioned, professors know very well how capable a second year person or third year person would be, and while you might find a sort of barrier between talking to professors and all because you might have never done this before, but most professors are very understanding and they won't look for most professors won't look for your immediate work beforehand. If you're at least working in if you're in second year, then definitely no one is looking for that. What they will be looking at is your interest in the field and all of the dedication and stuff. But as you go into your third year and all, it starts really mattering a lot, and that is when your profile, your previous project, your CV, all of this start getting really important. So first thing is it is recommended to start early. You don't want to apply to some professor and if they ask you let's say they just ask show me the GitHub repository or something because some professor as mentioned could also be looking for it, and you don't want to be okay I don't have it on GitHub and stuff, and you start doing last minute changes, or when someone asks for your CV you start making it right then. These things are very iterative. They go qualitatively over time. And so, most important thing when you are looking for these projects or these opportunities is your contact with seniors. So, okay, it might be difficult for you to contact a professor, but your senior is just someone who is at max 1 or 2 years older than you, and you can very easily approach them. So, my first project wasn't even in any technical field or something. It was around humanities and neuroscience and all of that. I just went to the professor's class. I mean, this was offline time. I just went to the professor's class and contacted them. But then later on, when my CS SOP started, my first SOP was through a senior. So he was doing a project and he asked me if I was interested. I was doing a project under his guidance during my CT in my 1-2, and also QSCP at that time. So he had a fair idea that I might be interested, and I used to talk to him beforehand. So like, he got me involved in that SOPs, and from there it started building. Like, after you have done your first project, you can easily approach a second professor. You can even give the reference of your first professor. Then when you try to apply for like a project outside your college, the same procedure follows. You contact your seniors that might be working over there, the people that are in reference. Because I think one thing that all of us have been trying to tell is directly contacting the person in authority and all isn't very feasible, because they get like 50s of these like demands and all every day. What's better is like if you have someone who you know, or someone like a mutual connection or something like that, then it is really easy to go through that process, and that is how it has worked for me most of the time. So that would be my advice for like any college project or even outside college.
Also adding to it, because like Somesh told, the process is iterative, like very true. Like, so I don't know if it's really of help or if it will help everyone, but for me personally, I, s- I made my CV. Like, CV is not something I think you need to necessarily have for sure in your second year, or probably a website too. But it helped me personally, because you sort of know where you stand at the end of your second year, and it sort of gives you perspective as to what you need to do to be able to like be in a place where you want to be later. In the sense, in the second year it sort of looked empty, and I knew that I needed things to fill up those gaps everywhere I could see on my CV. That's something which provides motivation to work whenever you need to, like, probably that helps too.
That's that's a
But
commonplace we all are at night now. So one more interesting question that we have is, so how did you know that you like you wanted to get into research, or you are really interested into research? And for people who are currently a PhD students, or incoming PhD students, how did you take that dive in that I want to pursue a PhD in this particular field? And how does your normal day at whatever, like, your research look like, because people, we generally don't know how researchers adapt to it being online, or how it differs in its online, offline, or in a lab. It would be great if you talk a bit on that.
uh, I can talk about how it is offline right now. So since I'm in the US, I'm living very close to my lab. So fortunately or unfortunately, it is extremely easy for me to walk 5 minutes to my lab and stay there and work for a very long time. But definitely staying around, like being able to go outside your house to do things helps. Uh, as far as the research part is concerned, a lot of different students are working in different directions have different experiences. In my case and Mihir Karmakari's case, our work involves a lot of software, which is okay to do at home, but it also involves the integration of software into very diverse hardware platforms that we have in the lab, which we can't do at home. And with extremely tiny changes coming up and bug fixes and modifications, it is it is very easy to go there in person and do it. And usually the day starts like due to the time difference, and we have some partners in Europe. We usually have meetings early in the morning, but it starts in the manner that early morning you have meetings, then have breakfast, get ready for the day, uh, head to the lab at around 10 or 11, and come back at if there is very little work to do, then come back at 6 or 7. Or if there is a lot of work to do on an extreme day, we might just come back past midnight. Uh, Come back home past midnight, and lunches and dinners are fitted somewhere in between during the day. Uh, so it varies depending how much when the next deadline is, and how how much you're done with it before. And since we are all from bits, you know how we usually do things. We've done things for the last few years. So, yeah.
So I mean, in case you are looking for a more relatable guy, so I have never like done any of my research internship or any other internship has been in offline mode. It went completely online since I was in my two. So yeah, I mean, so although like I was doing all these projects and all, so they were kind of fun during like offline time. So you're going to like the professor's chambers, you're discussing things, you're in your seniors' rooms and all. So okay, but not giving you a lot of FOMO as well. But let's talking about online experience. So I mean, it's still good. One particular thing I believe is better about online thing. Like okay, just one better thing that I personally find is you have people from all over the world at the same time, right? So even though my lab is at Triple IT Delhi, there are people from like different times, like San Francisco and all of these. So that is more like easy in that term. So let's look at the positive side. So I mean, right now accessibility to a person who for what it was not possible before is like very easy in comparison. I'm daily working with a person who is perhaps working in San Francisco, and when it was completely offline, this was generally not the case. Like people didn't prefer to like do these things over the calls and stuff. So yeah, that's one positive thing, and I mean, it's okay. I mean, I would have preferred offline, but it's not that bad as well in online either. So it's just about if you're looking at the positives and negatives.
Yeah, I can sort of like, not that I'm doing a PhD now, but like my team has like uh, people from 8 different time zones right now. Like it's just like 15 people, but it has people from 8 different time zones, and sometimes it's a late night meeting or sometimes it's an early morning call. But it's 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 good for a while. Like enjoy it for a while. But I think all of us still like try to hope it goes back to us going to labs or us working from a lab, which is much better. I think again, personal opinion.
Uh, I think we
Yeah.
went past the question to the PhD students. How did you like decide on going for a PhD? Like on like you're just committing to go to a PhD and spend that time for like that big commitment. How did you decide on that?
Maybe I can begin. So I had the same question during my thesis. So during my thesis was the right time to apply for graduate schools, graduate programs, and the options were that I was considering were applying for masters, then going for a job, or applying for a PhD, and then you have 5 years to decide what you want to do after your PhD, whether going to academia or going to a job. So I actually talked to a couple of seniors about this, and also my advisor, and in the end it was very clear. So if you like what you do a lot, PhDs are stressful. You will spend most of your time dealing with things that are not working as you intend them to, and that kind of just hitting against a wall, just trying to make it work all the time, is something that you could only do in the long term if you like your work enough to be doing it for most of the time. And don't get me wrong, you're not always fixing things that are broken all the time, but in the process of building things, uh, they don't go as planned, and you have to spend a lot of time improving, and that takes up time. But the frustration that comes out with, let's say in my case, the code that is never working or not working the way I desire most of the times, you need to be able to look past that and see what you can see what kind of satisfaction it brings you after it starts working. And if you like that enough and you're willing to stay in that same field for 3 years or 4 years doing those same kind of things, of course the kind of things you do changes over time, become more matured, and you take on larger projects and work in a better way. But if you're willing to do that for a large amount of time and you like your field enough, you should consider a PhD, or you should consider. And even if you're not sure, you should see if you can be a research assistant in a lab to get more experience so that you can base your graduate school decisions better off of that.
In my case, the I was mostly inclined towards research after my thesis, since till then I did not have any formal research experience as such. But during my thesis, as I worked on some research projects, and also I saw other PhD students and what they do, I found it that this is something that I will like to do for the next, say, 4 5 years. And in PhD, it involves quite a bit of new work, and that's what interested me a lot. So in it has a less component of developing rock solid tools, or I mean, in my case, software, but more of new concepts. And once they're built, once you see them deployed on hardware, real robots, in my case, it is very rewarding. So that's what got me very much interested into PhD. But as Kulkarni said, it is demanding, very much demanding, and you have to juggle between multiple things like your study, um, the actual work, writing papers, reading about other papers, reviewing other people's papers. So a lot of things to do. But if you enjoy uh, studying a little and enjoy the field, then it's not something that you'll be super stressed about, or you won't feel it as a burden. So if you're willing to commit to a field for this much time, and you think you enjoy it enough that it's not a burden, then it's worth going for a PhD.
Yeah, sorry I missed half a minute due to my internet, but I do agree with both of the players. I have not yet started my PhD, so I can't really comment how it goes later on. But and from my personal experience, when I was applying for grad school, like I applied to a varied from master's to PhD programs both, because I didn't know like as during my thesis also I was like should skip whether I'll be able to publish papers, because at the end of the day, PhD will require you to have like publish some novel research. But so I didn't know if I could do that. But then also like going through a review process during BITS itself, like when I was working on some SOP which resulted into a publication. But then initially going through the rejection cycle from a conference, sort of engaging with the comments from the reviewers helped me understand, okay, this process is also quite natural. It's just a logical way of proceeding with science, and reviewers are also trying to help you improve your work. And in that sense, I found that confidence that okay, I could go on and continue into full-time research role for like 3 4 5 years, which is like a PhD. And what I like to think of PhD is many would disagree, but it's something like a process which an artist goes through. So how many times in your life do you get paired up with an expert in the field? Most artists get paired up with an expert artist, and it's a training phase in the life. They get to know the how to create masterpieces and stuff like that. But how many times in your PSU is your manager going to be an expert in the field? Maybe not, but in case of a thesis and then a PhD, you will get some expert advice in a very narrow field, but you'll get someone who is guiding you, who will tell you what are the upcoming hurdles, pitfalls, and actually engage with you in a discussion. And I think that's one of the best ways for personal growth, which you can't find otherwise. But yeah, that's a very personal and hot opinion. So yeah.
Just adding to Pranav, and I completely agree with him. By the way, the process of building, if you like the process of building, you will like doing a PhD. And another thing that actually helped me make up my mind was the experience I had during my thesis. So not just related to the technical work, but with related to the fun we had with lab mates when we were not working, or what we, for example, we went on outings with our advisor and lab mates and just spent a day or two just not working and just chilling out outside in a park or near a lake or something. And even after work, we used to hang out with our lab mates and just do something fun. So not just work, but the people we were working with and the kind of work environment that the lab provided was also a reason that I chose to come back into the lab, or even consider working in similar environments like that, and then decide to apply for PhD program. So this was also one major uh, factor.
Also, like during the application process, because I went through the PhD application process this time, another important factor on the sidelines with me here is essentially like you might be very interested in the field, but another important factor to like that your decision should depend upon is if you really can gel with your advisor well. Like your advisor is going to be your mentor, your lab is going to be like your family for the next 4 or 5 years. You're going to be in a place where like you that might be your only support system. Like all of these are really really important things to consider because PhD is as all of them have described, PhD can become stressful at times, irrespective of how much you like that subject, and you really need people around who might also be facing the same, or who might be your like sort of like this, who might give you the support you kind of need. Like your advice, like you should definitely speak to everyone in the lab. You should definitely ping people, even if you have gotten an opportunity. You should ping people in the lab and try to get an experience of how the lab would be and how your next 4 years would be, because that would be a very very important thing to notice before you decide to take upon a PhD or not.
Yeah, thank you very much for all those insights. We'll now open up for questions from the audience. If there are any questions, you can directly unmute and ask the speakers. Or if you're uncomfortable, you could just put up in the chat box and either the speakers can take it up or I can ask it for them.
Actually, I think there's a point I wanted to discuss. So maybe just audience, please also ask your questions in chat box. But one thing I felt very strongly about while discussing with juniors and several friends who are also going through the same process is that, and I have personally also gone through that phase, is a thing with that we usually tend to self cancel out ourselves. We just see that, oh, this lab is doing super cool. I have no idea how to do this. Maybe I won't be able to do a lot if I apply here. And that is that I'm certainly guilty of thinking like this, and I'm also sure some people who are uh, in this position of applying right now would be also doing the same. This is actually not the right way to think about it, because firstly you would be comparing yourselves with PhD students. You guys, when you're applying for a thesis or a PhD, you're either beginning your grad school or you're an undergrad with just 2 years of basic engineering coursework experience behind you. So it is, firstly, it is not right for you to compare with the lab's current work, and always think of it as you are going to the lab for learning something and also contributing and helping out in the research. You if you think that you will go and you will completely do something revolutionary in the lab much better than what they have done, and if you can't do it, then there is no point in applying. That is certainly not the right mindset to be in while selecting or while emailing for your thesis or for your grad schools. And please don't fall into the trap of thinking that you're not good enough, because uh, as I've seen around me, we're usually our CVs are, we try to make our CVs pretty modest and pretty humble, and just, I've done this and just only this much, and you should be able to own what you've done in your CV and display it with pride, and just uh, con- those, because those are the strong points of your application. And yeah, please don't fall into the trap of thinking that the lab is certainly much better than what you are able to do currently, and just think that once you go there, you will be as good as them by learning from them. That would be the right mindset to be in while applying.
Yeah, definitely. Like you need to showcase yourself in the best and the most honest way possible, and just apply and leave the decision of you being good enough to work in the lab or not to the lab itself. Like you just need to apply, and they will decide if they can really work with you or not. Like just don't decide it for yourself.
There's a question from the form that we floated. Pranoma asks, is an incomplete project or leaving a project halfway considered as a negative aspect for while applying for new projects to professors?
As long as it's explainable or logical, I don't think it's a really negative thing. In the sense, you all take up like there are thousands of unsolved questions in every field, and you don't really like no one really thinks you can solve it. As long as you can explain the process of why you left it or the process of why you couldn't continue with it because these were the challenges, technical challenges you faced, I don't think that will be a really big thing. But it's always good to either have a logical explanation or finish the project.
Uh, I recently read a book about this actually. I have put it in the latest chat. It's called The Dip. The Dip. The author is Seth Godin. It's basically you need to learn. You need to choose when to quit and not pursue with an idea that you feel is going to go into a dead end. And uh, if your project is incomplete and it's in progress, you should definitely mention that it's a work in progress. And if you have stopped working on it, you should be able to decide early enough to stop working on it, so that you don't waste your time, a lot of your time doing it, and then choosing later to quit. So just keep an eye out for things like this, and uh, yeah, make a decision to quit early rather than too late. So,
There's been one more question in the form. How feasible is directly getting into a PhD program when compared to going through the standard MS and then a PhD?
It is definitely slightly difficult because I mean you're competing with other master people who have done masters. But it's so in that case it becomes important if you contact the professors and talk to them before applying applying blindly. So that's something that will be important.
Also, I think in the US, it's not a really strange practice. I think it's a fairly common practice to apply to PhD after your bachelor's because most of the PhD programs by themselves come up with a master's course at which you need to finish. Again, not every university maybe, but most of them. So there, as far as what I've heard from professors, they anyways like if you finish your masters, what is expected from you is way more than what is expected you if you finish your undergrad. When they are looking at your application, they're not going to absolute look at it at absolute scale and see how good you are. And that's one thing. But definitely if you want to apply to labs in Europe, uh, again, I'm really not sure about UK. Probably Pranav can tell more about that. But labs in Germany, France, they actually expect you to have a master's before you do a PhD, a lot of them say you have a dual degree, then I think you're fine with it. But then otherwise, I think they will expect you to have a master's. So it totally like sort of depends on where you're applying to.
Yeah, I do agree. Just to add about UK, so UK is quite weird, as in there's two kinds of MScs. Like there's a MSc Masters in Science, which is sort of terminal, and there's an MS, which is Masters in Research, which is like a toned down PhD program, if you want to think of it that way. And so what people do sometimes is in UK, maybe if you are sure you don't want to continue into a PhD or are unsure, then just apply to MSc programs. And if you are pretty sure you want to do a PhD or a research program, then they'll either apply to an MRes or DPhil or PhD directly, and then see how it goes. Again, all of this sort of is very specific and differs for each field. So, whichever field you are interested in, just go there, look at the program and what the requirements are. Also, look at current first or second year students enrolled in the program, so that you can just compare what their previous paths were and maybe just ask them or get in touch with them, and think that's more suitable rather than yeah fields.
Also, regarding the question which came up now, uh, just to add, if someone is considering doing a PhD without doing an MS, I think mostly like there are two reasons for it. One, MS programs are really expensive and PhD usually is funded. And second reason is some people do not want to put in that extra time of 2 years to get there because they are really sure they want to do a PhD and they want to save time. For the first set of people, like I really think if that is the reason, you should try to apply at least for a funded master's program somewhere. It might not be really easy to get into, but there are some unconventional options where you can like pursue a funded master's, try to get it. If not, like I think as Mihir has already told, like graduate research assistant positions at universities and in Europe, or even in to that fact in India, will help you gain some more experience before you want to decide you want to do a PhD or not. Also, there are some research-oriented roles, and even in the corporate industry, even in industries, which you could try to apply to and see if you can get those or some research experience.
Even as far as like masters are considered, so most people do masters I mean at least in US and all, not just to like being a step to PhD, but most of the time it's also about like in PhD you will have visa issues and all of that. So first is that, and I mean secondly building connections and always having that road open for exploration. So I mean you might think that you have work in machine learning or all of these big topics in your undergraduate. But as of reality, I mean, you need a lot of exposure as well. So like industrial exposure, working on some proper topics in your masters and also it gives you further clarity. So you might think that you are fit or you really want to go for a PhD right now, but like most people are unsure by the time they like reach their third year or fourth year, they cannot decide if they really want to do it. So MS also gives you a 2 year time to think about it in a better manner. But otherwise, there are a lot of people that go for a direct PhD as well. And yeah, as Rahul has already mentioned, like if you have done, if you are doing a dual degree, in many places it already counts as a like a master's degree. So, but I mean, I really don't know exactly about it, but I mean, if someone could extend over it, but that's also true.
Even in the US, it is okay to join an MS program and internally upgrade to PhD. It is a common practice, and it is actually an option available in many universities that you can just join a master's program and see if you want to work in a lab, find an advisor, and upgrade to a PhD program internally. So you don't have to go through that same application process to the same university. So I think in US it is a bit more flexible than it is in Europe. Europe, is it's a linear thing. In US, you can mix things up a little bit. For example, if you join a PhD program, you can get your master's on the way. You can join a master's and directly internally change it to a PhD program, complete your master's and then complete your PhD in the same time frame actually. So all of these are some variations that you can do anyways. So it's entirely up to you now. You have multiple options to choose from. If you have not made up your mind yet and you know you want to do at least a master's, then you can join a master's, make up your mind in the first year. See if that before applying, see if that university allows you to upgrade your program if you want to, and then in the first year you can take a decision whether you want to join the PhD program instead. So all of these are all dependent on what you're comfortable with and what decisions when you are comfortable taking a decision of doing what you want, either choosing a PhD or not choosing a PhD.
There's been one more question. Around what time should we start sending emails to professors for thesis for both the sems? Like I have heard that some professors actively look for students to join their labs during specific times.
There are sometimes you definitely shouldn't send an email. Uh, before I tell you about the time you should, if you know that the advisor or the professor publishes in a certain kind of conferences and their deadlines or submission deadlines are nearby, it is very unlikely that they will have the bandwidth to consider new students at that point of time because there is a rush for publication or completing things uh, uh, for submission. Final exams are sometimes when professors are a little bit occupied, and that those are the times you shouldn't be sending an email. Uh, there are some professors who take most of the professors actually check their emails on weekends, but I don't recommend doing that. Just send it on weekdays. But usually any other time of the year, if you know that university doesn't have any major event or that lab isn't uh, involved in a research cycle or something major that is coming up, they would usually be okay. As far as your academic year is concerned, for the next for the first semester thesis, you can send your email starting from the middle of 3-1 and up until the middle of 3-2. So you have that one period which where you can get a response earlier. The earlier the better, of course, but usually sometimes advisors don't have an idea what they're going to do 1.5 year into the future or so, or maybe 1 year. So just to be sure, middle of 3-1 to middle of 3-2 is a good time. Uh, ideally, you should be able to finalize your thesis by the beginning of 3-1. There are some people I know who have finalized by the middle of 3-2, but that becomes very late. So
Yeah, I do agree with Miller. Just to add to that, also don't try to email on year end because especially for Western countries, they have their Christmas and everything. Maybe a few professors take like just vacation and completely, then they come back after the next year starts. So I think the most replies I got were on the first or second week of January, and that's when they came back and went through the whole pile of email which they had received. So yeah, that's all.
another thing. So also avoid being in the pile of emails. Like it must be yeah. So don't email in the vacation because it is likely that they might skip over your email because there are too many emails to read. Also, no, no,
Always,
I'm of course I've also been in that pile and haven't received responses. So yeah.
yeah, definitely. Like my thesis response came after a second follow-up email after 2.5 months of sending the first email to the prof. So it's definitely like there are vacations. One good thing about our thesis duration is essentially it matches with their semester timings, and people usually go out. Like a lot of professors I've seen want to like take a break during the summers and not want to do research. So they're actively seeking students during our semesters, which is good enough. But please look out for specific instructions. Always go through their webpage in entirety. They have specific instructions at times telling add these things in the subject line to make sure that this specific email will not go into their spam folder. Always look into specific instructions as to what you need to do to ask for a research internship or research or a thesis for them. Uh, if they have something like I am not taking students, probably like you should not spend a lot of time writing an email to them. Though cold emailing sometimes might work, even if they have mentioned those specific things on their website, because some professors do not really care to update it frequently enough. And sometimes you might even find them to be 3 to 4 years old, and they might actually be taking students then. But yeah, I think it's about managing time because you definitely do not have a lot of time when you are actively doing like coursework, when you are doing research projects, and in the time you need to take out time to send out these emails. So yeah, I think it's more about optimization.
Uh, I guess we have crossed the time limit, but there's one question, one personal question. I'm not sure if it's apt to ask it or not, but do you guys plan to join the industry after your PhD or MS, or continue in academia? And is there a specific reason? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm already there, so I don't know. But I plan to do a PhD, and I'm not really sure if I want to join an industry or academia. I think it's more dependent. Like just let it go out till the end of your PhD. Some might be sure, some might not be sure. Some do research for the kind of impact they generate. Some do research for the just for the fun of it. You might have fun either way, but it's generally it's people then generally tell that you have a lot of impact. You see a lot of impact of your work happening when you do work on the corporate sector. But definitely, like it's just a matter of like what you like. I think in the end, if you want to do a lot of theory oriented research, industry might not really be the best place to do it, because you will not be encouraged as much as you would be being in academia. You will not get people that easily to work with in your own set of colleagues. You might actually find people to collaborate, but then it comes with its own set of disadvantages. I think in the end, uh, if you like research, you will at the end of the day figure out what you want to do either in the academic setting or in the corporate setting, and you have a lot of time to decide. And there are a lot of people who keep switching. So I don't know if it's really an important thing to know at this point of time. If you know it, good. Otherwise, I think it's fine.
Uh, Another difference to note between academic and industrial research is that academic research is always takes a little higher number of risks because you don't have you can afford to fail at a certain point. In industry, if you invest billions of dollars, you can't afford to fail. So you of course you academic research is more exploratory in nature, and it is a little bit open ended. It leaves room for some kind of changes, whereas industrial research is directed towards one thing in a very ordered fashion. So it might give you a little less leg room, but the difference in industry and academia is the industry kind of does everything in a very robust way. In academia, you can write a code base and then not have it verified by 100 other people, and it might have bugs in it, or let's say vulnerabilities or crashes. But in industry, it is done in a much more robust way and a much more reliable way than in academia.
So
But
most industries,
So personally speaking, even I haven't made up my mind. So I'm waiting for a few years into my PhD uh, to make this decision. Yeah, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, also most PhDs and all. So like if you take examples of so like most PhDs I know, or like you might find in your college or you might find in another college, they also do industrial work like in parallel with them. So there are all these fellowship programs and all of these. Also, the other thing is that so I mean you always have the opportunity to do both, but it will majorly be inclined towards one end. So, like maybe some professor is working on a lot of these, who is doing his PhD, is doing a lot of work in research, but he might also be involved in some program with some company as well. Also, regarding the thing that it's robust and all, so obviously it's because also because like companies want some product. So unless your company is like solely dedicated to research or something in that field, like even like Google or Facebook research and all of these, and that too to a certain extent only. So you need some product out of it. At least the major companies have some set goals and demands. So and that is not how it works in research generally. You think of an idea, you will either find this idea implemented in some niche conference somewhere, or you'll work upon it and you'll find that it doesn't really work. And so it's a long cycle, and most research comes after like get a very few results, even after a long time. So industrial research usually focus on the applied side and using the current approaches to like deliver products, and academia is very much more into theory and exploratory stuff. But I mean, at this point of time, I don't think you should be really worrying about this. There's a lot of time remaining in that to think about it. So yeah.
But if you really want to know, like, be it now or be it during your PhD, a good thing to do would be to diversify your applications in the sense that you have your summers always, try to apply to an academic oriented setting once, try to apply to an industrial research oriented setting once, be it in PhD or during the undergraduation or graduation, so that you sort of have a sense of how things work in each of these domains so that you can decide for yourself better.
That's it with the questions that we have got. Thank you for taking wonderful time on it for the start. I know some of like we have crossed the stipulated time, but thank you for coming. Thank you both the Mihir for joining on an early Saturday evening, and for the others for joining in a really Saturday evening. Yeah. Let's stop here and thank you for joining. If there are any questions, probably you could send them over to us and we can email them to you if that's okay. Or
Yeah,
That
sure.
was
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having. Thanks for having us.
Yes,
thank you, thank you.
thank you for this opportunity.
thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Bye bye. Have a great weekend.
Yes.
Thanks.